So let's take a look at a tweet or two in response to part of the discussion that we're having here. Okay, B. Lumbasi says, arresting suspects is one thing, prosecution is another. Our courts hardly see evidence in big fish cases. Otiende Amolo, Member of Parliament there, Arieda. So the files were submitted Friday evening, reviewed over the weekend independently, and confirmed for arrest for Sunday night, and all charges approved as presented. Really? Okay. All right, let me skip to you, Bwana Kithi. You've seen what Otiende Amolo has asked. Yes. Do you have the same question in mind as an advocate of the High Court?
I do. It's an exciting, flawless system, if you ask me.
Is it believable?
No, it is not. It is not. You know, what should happen is that the investigations ordinarily are done by either constables all the way up to, well, the police system, basically. Those are the people who do the investigations. Then they submit the files to DPP for purposes of, you know, reorienting the evidence towards culminating into a conviction. Now, that is a very tedious process, which ordinarily ought to be possibly look at the court side. You're supposed to be the prosecution and the court, and deducing that evidence, if presented as is, what is the sustainable conviction, that the possible sustainable conviction you're going to get. Now, I do not know personally that this review was done pursuant to the evidence that was taken there.
You're talking about the NYS.
Wait, when the evidence is still being collected. Because up to now, this morning, there are still people who are recording statements. In fact, there are people who have been called and others are being looked for, so that we have 48 of them. Presumably, all the 48 are going to be charged. Now, what is suspicious there is that if the infrastructure has not been laid completely, so that then they will be need to investigate what somebody is going to say. Yet you say that you have full proof of the evidence that will sustain a conviction within 48 hours. I think that is unbelievable. You know what? Some things are humanly possible and some things are generally overtly humanly impossible. So that which is not possible, let's just say it is impossible. So for let's say this. If there is a satisfaction to the public, so that then this pressure on all the institutions involved goes, then we need to charge people so that then this thing gets out of it. And it's true, because the shelf life of news in this country is about 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we'll have moved to the next scandal. Kenya Power is coming. The forest...
There's a forest one this morning.
Yes, and we'll have moved and mutated to the next one. Yeah. The other NYS scandal has, of course, dissipated into oblivion in terms of the national psyche, because we don't even talk about it anymore. So right now, we are dealing more about survival into those official positions. We are dealing more about removing the pressure on certain individuals. So what goes shall go, meaning that we will then charge the people as they come. And therefore, that's a conveyor belt. As far as I'm concerned, investigation and collaboration between investigation and the prosecuting institution is not an easy task. It is, in fact, a very intellectual-based system. It's not what the policeman has done, then you just submit it so that then you're out of the hook. No. I think you must be bold enough to say what you've done is not right. In fact, we should finish everything out of this fast, and then we prosecute. But if you're doing it to satisfy the public outcry, then it's political.
Fair enough. Honorable Owino, let's expand this discussion.
Yes.
Let's talk about Kenyan society. Let's talk about what sort of messages, what we are seeing out there in terms of people finding 60 million in their accounts, people finding 15 million in their accounts and writing back to institutions. We read that in a paper this weekend to say, I'm not sure this money is mine. What does that tell us? What does that tell us about our society, where we see young people increasingly willing to get involved in corruption? What about our ethics, our values as a society? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it has settled to be a lifestyle, which is very sad. So, as Otiende says, we also say really here, and we doubt, because this had played before. I hope it's not another drama. But this is what will happen. We have done it before in the political arena, we will do it here. If these guys fail in the system not to give Kenyans justice, then we will take these guys to people's court. At one time...
Which is the People's Court? Where are the offices?
In the streets. At one time, we went to eject IEBC because of the same mischiefs. Because system is not working for people. And the people who are responsible for this mess is the current administration. The buck stops with the president. As I said, if something is let go again, and again, it becomes systemic. That is why I used another word. The Kenyans are euthanized. They are not sensitive to anything corruption. No. And as a result of that, everybody wants to be like so and so. And how did so and so become so and so? Because he looted. So we have a rotten society. But corruption must come to an end. Now, this is just a small something in the cup. There are so many agencies of the government which are corrupt, and it brings me to ask this, Wahiga. The whistleblowers, okay, how much are they protected? Because if you wait for the internal audit, study the word internal, they are under who? In this case, under PSS and all that. And sometimes they are told what to investigate. But if we had that empowerment of whistleblower, somebody who can have a spine and say, there's something wrong here, and reporting system of that thing, then we start investigating. At the time you arrest, you have the evidence. But this rush, at the end of it, we might be told there are not sufficient evidence to convict these people. So yes, we have a rotten society, but it is this generation to end it. No, we can't pass.
Do they look like they're ending it?
If they don't in the system, we'll do it on the streets. I'm saying.
Oh, okay. You mean this administration?
These guys should resign even now. You know, there's something we should.
Who should resign?
Those people who are being questioned. You see, there's something which used to happen. If somebody questions your integrity, you spine up and say, I'm resigning. Or if something going very wrong and you don't like it, where is the conscience of Kenyans? You should stand up and say, I'm resigning. So what I see, Waiga, this thing is not going to work. It has never worked in the system. We are going to take another angle. That's the people's power. We inject. We
are back to the people's power. I thought the handshake.
We want to resist corruption. We are getting back there.
Oh my God!
By all means.
By all means possible. Raphael, you come in. Talk to me about the psyche of a young person now. And we were having a discussion actually off camera about the fact that if you look at, if any convictions are done this time round, we can assume that the people who are being arrested are not those that have been involved in corruption, let's say 10 or 15 years ago. Yet corruption has been a narrative in this country. I was seeing headlines this weekend. Someone picked a snapshot of a newspaper from 1960 where the then, can I call him, former President Daniel Arap Moi, when he was vice president, said our agenda is to deal with corruption. That's in 1960. We're in 2018. When the Jubilee government took power again for a second term, they said our agenda is to deal with corruption. You're seeing a rolling narrative that's 50 years old, and it affects every generation. What is going wrong here? What is your thought also about this produce versus producer sort of mentality? Let me get your thoughts on this.
I think first of all, it has been fashionable to say that we are going to fight corruption. But I personally think, and I agree with Mheshimiwa and Wakili here, that we need really decisive action, not just for the cameras. We shouldn't do it for the cameras. We shouldn't even do it for the public because there's a public outcry, but we should do it for the youth and the children of this country. We should do it for the future of this country. Because what is happening, how do you convince someone who's gone to school, gotten an education, how do you convince him even to work hard when he's seeing people who haven't even gone to school accumulating wealth in all manner of ways? How do you even convince him that education is important? How do you convince young people that, look, you need to work hard? Why should you work hard when you can wake up and find 60 million in your account without supplying anything? And what that is doing, I think we are losing a sort of focus on the importance of hard work, on the principle of process, that it doesn't matter how you get your VX, you can just wake up and acquire one. So it doesn't matter. I mean, there are no values. So I think we are moving towards a value decay of our country, and I think we need to deal with that. And so that's why I was saying we remain extremely skeptical about this arrest of a few people, because we know that the system is rotten. The system is rotten, and for me, I think there are three things that we need to do. First, and Mheshimiwa did allude to that, I think the president needs to take firm action. There is no way in the world where corruption has been fought without political goodwill from the very top. So the buck stops with the president. Two, I think the institutions that have been given mandate to tackle corruption need to be truly independent, but also firm. But lastly is the public. Remember, we are a very ethnicized society. Very soon people will start coming out and saying, no, our people are being targeted.
We almost saw something similar yesterday in the Rift Valley.
So yes, so the public also cannot be, we cannot be spectators in this. I think the public needs to realize the damage that corruption is causing and say, look, everyone needs to carry their cross, whether you come from our backyard, whether you come from our community. Truly, if you're involved in corruption, we need to deal with you. And I think for me, if we do not deal with corruption, regardless of anything else that we deal with, we can talk about economic growth, the much that we want. We can talk about development, the much that we want. We can talk about big 4, big 5, big 6, and whatever big that we want. But for as long as we do not deal with corruption, we haven't handled anything yet. Okay. And it is not just dealing with corruption because it's a good thing to do, but it is the right thing to do. And we can postpone it. It can't be tomorrow. I think it has to be dealt with today. Otherwise, we won't have a country.
Okay, Advocate, let me come back to you. You've given us a lot of legal perspective, but let me get your view on the nation's psyche. It's almost like one gets a feeling that in this country, if you if you find yourself working in the right company, so to speak, or with the right relative, in place, then dying poor is a sin, because you surely must manipulate those connections. It almost seems like nobody says no to corruption suggestions in Kenya.
That is true. It's true.
Let me get your thoughts on this.
It's true. It's true. Because that's the orientation of the Kenyan society now. Let me put it this way. First, we inherited the democratic process, which is, I believe, a monster on its own. You see, democracy is divisive in itself, where you are called upon every 5 years to divide yourself into certain fiefdoms and bias yourselves for or against someone. Mm-hmm. Now that is a reward mechanism. Those people that put you into power will have certain expectations, and legitimate expectations for that matter. When now you are forming government at whatever level, right from the county levels to national government, what you will do is you will then put people in the reward mechanism. Those people, and some of them, then divide themselves into certain tiers. You see, first is the political class. The political class will have Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, William Ruto, and the rest. And among them, they have the social environment that gets rewarded because of the political investment that they have made. Below that are the investors. You will hear the names of Jimmy Wanjigi and the rest coming up, who then support a certain wing that needs to be rewarded. And those are the contractors, because what they do is then they get rewarded by the system for having sacrificed, financially, to then support a certain cause, which is a political cause. Now, below that, again, are you and me, and the electorates, who then wait to be told what to do and move on. To be in the streets, to demonstrate, and so on and so forth.
Resist, as he said.
Yes. So, how then is this democratic orientation subverting the fight against corruption? When you have put me into power and I'm giving you a contract so that you pay yourself back your monies, what happens is I am duty bound to ensure the success of that contract, notwithstanding whether you supply air or you don't supply air. What it means is, therefore, I will deal with you with kid gloves. I will then bring the custodian of the appointments of the power that then should investigate you. I will then instruct, or instructively, either overtly or covertly, will then protect you. So then there are those people who will receive 8 billion from NYS on account of the facilitation towards compensation, because they have sacrificed. This is in every system. the democratic system then is rife with those fallibilities. Now, it's not an infallible system because it has many loopholes against which so many people need to benefit because of the competitive environment every 5 years. When you come from an election, therefore, one, you have debts to pay on account of the socialized environment that I've said. Immediately after that, you need to accumulate funds for purposes of the next cycle of election.
Okay.
So eventually, we are fighting corruption, yes, but it's going to be exposed at a certain level. The level below those political investors called the contractors. Above that, those are the people who are untouchable. So those people who are going to be taken to court, most of them are going to belong to the level of you and me, who then are merely following a system of the top.